start selling because the jobs we can fill with contractors.
No, interesting. I'll share some of my experience as well. Towards the beginning of us starting out our agency model, I did hire a sales team as well within our community. People that had passion, people who had experience with being able to vet projects and understand what our ideal customer profile was. But I'm going to be honest, because I had not had a lot of sales experience before, trying to set this up for the first time and encountering all the difficulties that we had, not having a very streamlined workflow, all of these things contributed towards having to slim that team down and focus on a handful of people instead of a much larger team.
Nice. I think you've got Morningstar muted.
Oh, give me 1 second. Let me unmute. Morningstar, you go to wait. Yeah, Morningstar. Can you chat now? He's off server mute, so when he is good to chat, he'll jump in.
All right, guys, I do have a hard stop at 10:40. So if it's okay, you okay with me getting started?
Yeah, let's take it away, man. What does the agenda look like for today?
So first of all, great. Welcome everybody. The agenda is going to look like, first of all, we're going to go for what is sales and where you could apply it. Like, I don't know the level of experience everybody has here, right? So what I've done is prepared like an introduction to sales, like some major techniques that you need to know. So first, I want everybody to understand like where sales can be used, because a lot of people think sales is just something you do at work, right? But I don't know if you've read the book, Life is a Sales Pitch. You're negotiating all the time, whether you're a salesperson or not. Right, the second thing we're going to go through, which Esteem might be something of note for you, is the different types of salespeople. So when building a sales team, what type of salespeople are there? Because not one salesperson can do all different types of sales. Okay. Then we're actually going to go into the techniques, the importance of different things, listening, talking, planning. We'll go through an objection handling technique. I always go through this in my first session. It's one of the most important, because regardless of what level of sales or what stage of the sales cycle you're in, you always get objections. Okay. Then we have a look at the types of questions, how to get people to answer. And then we'll look at a little bit of negotiating a price. When somebody says to me, "Oh, can I do it cheaper?" What do I say to them? And then we'll finish off with mindset, because sales is not easy. Okay, so a lot of people come into it and think, "Oh, that sales guy's making 250 grand a year. I can do this." But trust me, getting 60, 70 no's a day takes a lot of mental resilience. So that's going to be the agenda. We will keep it to a little bit of tight schedule in terms of timings on each area. But I would love for you guys to be interactive. I would love, if anybody's got experience, if I'm not perfect, I'm 44, I've learned a lot. I've been doing sales for 25 years, but I'm still learning, right? So especially with people from around the world, and what Web3 does is it brings us closer to all different cultures around the world. The way I sell to a British person is very different to the way I sell to a German, to the way I sell to a person from US, to the way I would communicate with somebody from Asia, right? You've got to understand all of these things. So does that help? Is there anything in specific that you guys want to add or go over?
I absolutely love the agenda, man. And I'm looking forward to the mindset bit as well, because there was a period where I was like, left, right, and center. We're getting clients for pretty much every single week, nonstop, pretty much, right? And then mindset-wise, after that stopped, I had like a bit of a mental block. So I'm gonna be looking forward to that specifically, but happy for you to take it away. Oh, and Joseph's mentioned how they spend money, how to hook them, what they like, what they want, targeting users. So yeah, let's get into it.
How to hook them, etc. Okay, so we can probably, I think what will probably happen is we'll do a second session in a couple of weeks, because there's a lot of things to cover, especially when it comes to negotiating. I would love to help you guys write an intro pitch, but let's get started from the top, right? So again, we've got a lot more people here. Just a quick show of hands, or come off and just give me a quick shout. How many of you have sales experience of any sort? I am okay. I am keeping an eye on events chat, so feel free to write in there. Okay, so question for you guys, right? I said that there is sales can be used in many different things. So we're going to cover this part quickly. Where do you think you can use sales? Reed
Pretty
said
much everywhere.
everywhere. That's pretty good. But let's give people a few examples, like something a bit more. So, for example, myself, this morning, I had to negotiate with my wife because she wouldn't make me a cup of tea, and I wanted her to make me a cup of tea because I had loads of things to do. Yesterday I had to negotiate with my 3-year-old because he wouldn't eat his dinner. Right? Those of you that are not in sales and you do engineering jobs or you're software engineers, when do you think you negotiated at work? There you go, Joseph.
Negotiating with product
Correct.
managers, having to, come to agreements on what the scope of work is, what makes sense, what doesn't, what can be delivered, what can't be delivered, that type of thing.
Exactly. Right. So then you've got job interviews, you're negotiating your salaries, you might be negotiating your training program. So, it can be used everywhere. So don't come into a sales session thinking, I'm not a salesperson, I don't have a sales job. It's not going to be useful. My life has been changed with um, some of the techniques that I've learned over the last few years. It's helped me improve my relationship with my missus. It's helped me improve my relationship with my mum, my brother, my sister. So all of these things, so it can help everywhere. Okay, but enough of that because we know it can be used everywhere now. So let's go look at the types of salespeople there are. Okay? So, what type of salespeople do you guys think there are?
So how I understand it, there are, lead generators, there's people that do the outreach, there are people that close it, but I don't know if any of these are the actual terminologies used or the actual titles.
You're close. You're thinking logically, which is the right way to think in sales. Logic is the best way. I mean, I'm not degree educated. I've learned everything on the job, and you just need to be able to think logically. So let's look at the first one you said, right? So you got the people that do the initial outreach and do the lead generation. Okay. In sales terms, we call these guys either cold callers or we call them SDRs, right? But in a lot of companies, people will say, okay, your first part of the job as coming into here is that you're a cold caller. You're going to be generating leads, and then we'll take you into a senior sales role. But even the senior sales role and the cold calling type, they fall into one category, right? That's one particular type of salesperson. Anybody want to guess? They're going out to get business. What are they doing? They're hunters. They're hunting for new business. Okay. So a cold caller, a lead generator, a senior new business person whose job it is to go out there, pick up new business and close the deals. These are all hunters. Okay. Now that's one type of salesperson. What could be a second type of salesperson?
Would there be one for like inbound leads, people that reach out, to you, looking specifically for what you have to offer?
Yeah, so we usually call they would fall into the second category of people because these are people that usually don't have the resilience or the skill set to be able to do cold calling and go out there and generate the leads. So they wait for inbound and they usually develop into like your company wins accounts and then they will grow those accounts. So what type of a salesperson do you think that is? Regency, that's one of them, but that's not this one. This is farmers, right? They're account managers. So what they do is they go into an account that your new business person wins, right? And they will take over that account once you've done the first deal. And there you've now landed the account with the hunter. This person's job is now to grow that account. is to farm that account and make it grow and nurture it, right? So you have hunters to hunt the business, farmers to grow the business. Okay, those are the two key skill sets. But then you also have partnerships, right? So can a new business person necessarily look after partnerships? Can an account manager look after partnership type of sales because it's a different type of sale? Right? Those we call channel salespeople. Okay, the channel salespeople usually are talking to your partners. They're looking at your tech partners, your services partners, and seeing how you can work with them to grow the business. Right? They don't necessarily make any cold calls because they're working with a set of 10 or 12 partners, and those partnerships are probably put in place at top level. But it's also their job to go out there and find new partners. Okay, and then we have the last two, the last type of salesperson, which was mentioned by Reedson. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that properly, but the bid closers. Okay, so those are the four different types of salespeople. Okay, hunters make great farmers, but very rarely would you find a new business person that does an account manager role, because a new business person has the sort of characteristic where um, they like the fight. They like uncertainty, right? They like the buzz of. They like the challenge, right? That's a hunter's personality, right? So if you put them in a farmer's, farmer land where they've got to just look after one or two accounts, the likelihood is they're going to get bored of that job and leave and find another job somewhere else. Okay, but hunters make great farmers. Hunters are also quite often used to as bid closers. Okay, however, all of those four, if you're a very, very large organization, if you've got, a sales team of 100, 150 people, it's quite likely you've broken your sales team down into that, and you've got various different people that are doing different jobs. And then what they also do is the hunters part, like Esteemed quite rightly pointed out. Okay, hunters, you can also have people that are just cold callers, and if you have just cold callers, that's where the bid managers and the bid closers come in. Okay, but the main thing today to remember is, um, those are the four type. And you, before you start looking into a sales job for yourself, try to figure out, what sort of personality you have, and where and there do you fit in, and then start doing research of the types of jobs out there that fit that, and you're more likely to get a sales job if you go for one type of job. Okay, the number of times I've had account manager CVs or channel manager CVs for new business roles because people haven't differentiated, and we've just ignored them. Okay, any questions on this part?
For small businesses, what would you do? Would a lot of these roles pretty much overlap? If you had to make something super lean, what would you do?
Okay, so 100%. When you're a small business and you've only got one or two salespeople and you're one of them yourself, then you have, what we did, Joe and I. So when we set up Core Team 4 years ago, right? It was just Joe, my business partner, and I. We were the only two in the business, so we had to win the accounts, we had to manage them, and we had to grow them. But what we did very quickly between the two of us was figure out who's got the better hunter personality and who's got the better farmer personality. Okay, and it was realized Joe's a better farmer than I am, and I'm a better hunter than he is. So when first 6 months, we both went out there, made cold calls, we tried to win them. But after about 6 months, it sort of happened that I hated managing accounts. So I would just win it, do the first deal, and say, Joe, right, here's an account, go in there and grow it. Right. And I would go out there and win a new account. And, so winning new business when you're a small business is the most important part. Over your first 6 months, it's unlikely that you're going to get a client that's going to give you loads and loads of repeat business, right? You might get lucky, and if you do, that's great, because that's your cue to hire an account manager.
No, great feedback, man. Great feedback.
Okay. Okay, any other questions? Anybody feel free to ask.
Joseph asked, for a SaaS company, which one do you actually need?
For a SaaS company, the first type of person you should all be hiring when you have any type of company is a new business person, right? It's pointless having a farmer to grow the account, or in fact, I'm wrong. You should have either a channel salesperson or a new business person, right? So again, I'll refer to my Web 2 firm. It's Core Team. We're a services, we do consulting. We work with one particular vendor, right? That vendor's name is Workday, right? That they compete with SAP and Oracle. I'm sure you've heard of the other two. But this vendor, so now that I could have hired a channel salesperson, because what we could do is go to Workday and say, right, could you give us leads, right? And really go and speak to all of their salespeople and generate leads for them from them. But we decided not to do that because that would have meant we're reliant on our partners to send us business. So we're only as good as they are, right? My goal was that we needed to be the best and we needed to be better than our partners, which means we needed to build our own sales team, which was elite. So we went after new business first. In fact, the first 6 people we hired were new business. Joe managed the accounts as they came in. Only now we've actually started to hire account managers and just cold callers. But the first six people we did, they specifically could do cold calling, they could do bid management, and they could also do a bit of account management. Okay. Anybody else got any questions?
Rexon's left a comment in the events VC chat. He said, I thought closers were brought into deals with more difficult or major client accounts rather than going through a tender process.
So my first question to you would be, what is a tender process, right? A tender process is for me, I interpret as that as just a different type of sales process, right? So you're right. It depends on the experience of the salesperson, right? So 4 years ago, when I started the Core Team, I did everything 360, right? I did sales, I did bid management, I did bid closing, I did everything. But now my role is developed, right? Because we've got a massive team, so I can't spend 100% of my time on the phone generating leads. So now my team, who can generate loads of leads between them, but are not all great closers, they bring me into deals to close the deals, right? So my role has changed into a closer position. So they now generate the lead. They may even do the first part of the process, but if they want me to close the deal and guarantee closure of the deal, I need to be involved as early as possible. So really, they need to bring me in on the qualifying meeting so I can understand not just the company, the opportunity, but a closer. The one thing that a closer really does, they understand the person they're speaking to, and that takes time. Okay. You're right. Way more bureaucracy through the tender process takes 2 to 3 months more time, and you definitely have competitors because you've probably got 5 or 6 other companies that are in the tender process with you. So much harder. But again, it can be taken through with a team in there. One thing I would say is that if you are a new business person and that's what you want to develop a career in, then please make sure you have a LinkedIn profile, right? A LinkedIn profile that's tidy, that's professional, and it's suited to your personality. Okay, LinkedIn is by far the number one source of lead generation if you are starting a new business. Okay. All right. If there any more questions on this part, or we'll move on to some skills and some other stuff like that. Okay. Have your face on LinkedIn, mate, not your PFP. Okay. So first, the question I have for you in terms of techniques. Now we decided what type of salesperson we are. We now need to develop our skills, right, into becoming a great salesperson. So the first question I have for you guys is, how important is talking and how important is listening in sales. If we could just do maybe a ratio from 100% and split it between talking and listening, how would you split it? Would it be 50-50, 60-40? What would it be?
It's got to be 80 plus for listening, I'd say. 80 talking, 80% listening, 20 talking. Joseph, that's all right, man. That's all right.
Yeah, I mean, Regent, Ella, Esteem, absolutely right. 80-20. If you forget the 80-20 ratio, just remember God gave you 2 ears, 1 mouth, right? Listen is twice as much as you talk.
Nice.
Okay. What? Why is why is listening, and how do we? Because a lot of salespeople say, "Well, I need to pitch them. I need to talk to them about my product," right? But what should our talking be, right? Of course, we've got to do the elevator pitch, the intro, right, which takes a minute or 2 minutes. But what should our talking be in a call or in a meeting? Did I phrase that question correctly? Did you guys understand it? So I've got some visuals to help you guys out. Okay, so you're supposed to be doing 80% listening, 20% talking. But if you're doing so little talking, what are you actually doing? And I've got on the screen here the 3 Qs, right? The 3 Qs are qualify, qualify, qualify. Okay? Questions. That's all you should be doing in a meeting, right? This is how I structure a 1-hour meeting. Last week I had a 1-hour meeting with a client. First 5 minutes were spent doing intros with the wider team. They had a few extra people there. I had one of my colleagues there, trainee. So we did some intros. We said hi's, blah, blah, blah. Then the next 50 minutes out of the 55 remaining, I did qualifying, right? What do you want? Why do you want it? How's your team involved? How did you come to this decision? Blah, blah, blah. Really understanding what it is that they're doing. And then I spent the last 5 minutes, this was my close to them, right? In the last 5 minutes, I took 4 minutes repeating back to them a summary of what they had said to me over the last 50 minutes. So I said, so you said you want this, you want this, you want this. This is the problem you have. This is what you're trying to solve. This is how you would like to do it, blah, blah, blah. Is that right? Yes, it is. Is there anything that I've missed out? No, you haven't. This is actually a pretty good summary. Look, just take a minute out and just have a quick think to see if there's anything missed out, because this is really, really important to me. Okay. And I asked that question 3 times because it's usually the 3rd time that they actually tell you what's on their mind. And if the 3rd time they say, actually, it's nothing, we're good, then you move on to the next stage. Right. So I've repeated back to them. I've gone through that exercise and like, no, there's nothing wrong. I said, okay, great. So the only difficulty you have now, right, is to choose which one of our services you want to have, because we can solve all of those problems. And I dropped case studies in front of them and I gave them these details. Okay. So 50 in a 1-hour meeting, 5 minutes intro, 50 minutes questioning, 5-minute closing. Okay. So 3 Qs, asking questions is really important in a meeting. I've put here, we're going to, I think somebody mentioned open and closed questions. I'm going to go into that in a second, but you're going into a sales role. You're starting your first job. You're a sales manager. You've hired 2 or 3 people. You need to remember the 5 Ps. I know I've had them on the screen, but does somebody want to tell me what the 5 Ps are? So first one is planning. Regent says never heard about the 5 Ps. So take a guess, guys. Come on, have some fun. What could the 5 Ps be if you haven't seen the screen? He remembers the phrase, okay? All right, here we go. So 5 P's. Planning prevents piss poor performance. It's one of my own statements. It's something that I use with my team all the time. I have it printed, and it's on my wall, right? It's in front of me. And I did get bad at it, and that's why I've had to print it out and put it on the screen, put it on my wall in front of me, because it's very, very easy to forget, especially when things are going well. It's easy to get arrogant and stop dotting the I's and crossing the T's. Okay, at that point, planning becomes even more important. And as you know, you can even ask Ruthie. You know, he's working with us at Eclipse, and our planning had gone off. And the first thing he did when he came back in is really got our planning back in order. Okay, and as a salesperson, this is really important. First thing I'd say to you is get access to your CRM if you have one. If you don't have one, you know, HubSpot, do a free version. It's an amazing CRM. Get on it and spend 2 days learning how to use your CRM inside out, because your CRM can do your outreach. It can do everything for you. Okay. So CRM. So I'll put these graphics up in there for you guys so you can use them, or do what you like with them. Okay. So next thing we're going to go into is types of questions. Okay. Types of questions. Sorry, before I go on to that, somebody just asked me a question in there. So you have no name. Oh, Reese. What are your thoughts on just having a general convo, becoming friends with the person, then last bit, 20 minutes of the call discussing business? That's really that's a good approach as well. But again, when you're becoming friends with them, you know, there is a danger that sometimes the conversation can go into a direction and it's very difficult to bring it back to business. Right? The trick when you're making friends with somebody and using that technique is that you can't really then say to them at the end of the conversation, let's talk about business. Or the only thing you can do with that technique is win them over, make them like you, and then for them, somehow get them to bring up at the end of the conversation, so let's discuss business for 5 minutes. And it will absolutely happen because you're there to discuss business, right? You've set that meeting up to discuss business. But just don't discuss it. Just talk to them. And I've used this several times with clients, especially in my younger career. And I learned this technique by accident. It was the first meeting I ever went to. The guy invited me in. You know, I pitched him. It was a telecoms company, and we spent 4 hours in a pub, right after lunchtime, talking about. I knew about what his wife did. I knew he had loads of property in Portugal. I knew what he wanted to do after work. I knew why he was in that job, why he wanted to, you know, how he would even leave that job if there was something that came up. Basically, we knew everything, but I understood him, you know, inside out. And then at the end of it, he goes to me, listen, I need to tell you something. Initially, I heard your pitch on the phone and I just wanted to sit with you because I have a sales team and I wanted to see how you pitch. Right. But I really like talking to you and let's discuss business for a couple of minutes. These are the sort of things that I need. Okay, so it can work. Okay, so next we're going to go into open close question types of questions. First of all, what is a closed question and what is an open question?
So closed questions, you get like a one-word response, and open questions, you kind of let them keep talking. You can continue adding to the conversation.
Exactly, right. So closed question, you get a yes no answer. And an open question, it's basically, an open question means that it's impossible for the other person to give you a yes no answer. Okay. And open questions start with 5 particular words. Okay. What are those words? I just used one of them. Actually, maybe there's more than 5 because I just learned a few more. All right, so I found 6 so far in what you guys have said, but you're all along the right lines. These are the ones that I had. Yeah, there is 6. Sorry, I made an error. What, where, when, why, how, who. Okay, if you start the question with any of these 6 words, it's absolutely impossible for the person sitting in front of you to give you a yes/no answer. So rather than asking somebody, "Are you ready to move to the next stage?" Because if I said to you, "Are you ready to move to the next stage?" what sort of answers could you give me? Yes or no, right? Now, if I asked you, "What reservations do you have before we move on to the next stage?" am I asking you, can we move on to the next stage? I'm telling you I'm going to move on to the next stage. All I'm simply asking you is what reservations you have. Can you answer that with a yes or no? Okay, so remember these questions. So 2 types of questions are open questions and closed questions, right? There is a third type of question, which is really important. And this is just something you learn with time, right? It's called leading questions, right? So when I'm trying to take somebody through a 15-minute journey of questions, I want to take them, I'm helping them build a story, right? So my questions are written in a story, right? First, I want to learn about their overall picture. So give me an overview. Then I want to know about, what it is that they want to achieve during this particular task. Then before I give them the solutions, I want them to feel pain, right? So I'm going to ask them questions around where do they see the problems coming up? What challenges do they see happening? Is their team, have they got the right? I'm going to really make them feel the pain. Then I'm going to say to them, repeat all of that back to them and say, okay, yeah, do you know what? I know you got that pain, but we got to solve that problem. The only pain you really have is picking which of my services you want. Okay, so I'm not going to go into leading questions today because that is a session on its own. Like, if I may say to you guys, go out there, do some reading on those. It's a really great way of connecting people and building stories. Any questions on this before we go on to objection handling and a little bit on price negotiation? Okay, so the next thing we're going to go into is objection handling. When do we get objections? Or can somebody give me the type? Sorry, go on, Nick.
I'd say objection handling. Oh, well, you get objections when you haven't listened to them properly, when you don't really understand what their needs are, what their pain points are, and you instead just go straight into selling, knowing that they've given you pretty much everything on a platter, or you haven't been able to extract everything onto a platter, and you've still decided to try to sell them something that they might not necessarily feel that they need.
Bang on. That's absolutely one of the reasons. I just when we hired our Joe and I hired our second salesperson at Core Team. One of the questions I asked him at the interview is like, can you tell me how many deals you haven't closed that you lost in the last, 6 months? And he came up with a silly figure like 12 or something. And I was like, and 7 of them were with the same client. I was like, oh my goodness, like you've got a qualifying problem. I didn't even ask him any questions. And the other questions, bro, you got a qualifying problem. just wouldn't agree with me. He's like, I tried everything. He worked for me for a year, and I asked him the same question. I said, can you tell me now what your problem was in your previous jobs? Because I had a qualifying problem. But yeah, so when you haven't qualified at something properly and then you go for the close, you're closing too early, you haven't understood, that's definitely you're going to get objections. But is that the only time you're going to get objections? When else will you get objections? What about when you phone somebody for the first time? Are they going to just talk to you, or are they going to say, I don't want to talk to you, I don't have time? What about when you try to close them? I have a budget, like this is how much it's going to cost, and they say, I don't have the budget. It's something that we haven't qualified, but that's also a problem, right? So you can get objections at any part of the process. It's not always at the end. You can get it at the very start. You can get it in the middle. You can also, objections, you don't just get them in sales. Let's say you're a software engineer or you're a marketing person, you're doing your job, and your manager comes in and they're blowing their top at you because you've done something wrong. For me, that's like, oh shit, right? So this objection handling technique can be used to handle objections, but it can also be used to handle difficult situations, right? Situations at work, situations at home, situations outside. You can use this technique anywhere. There's 5 particular steps to this technique. So when you get an objection from somebody, or when somebody walks into the room and they're annoyed at you and they're saying that you haven't done something correctly, how are they feeling? If you want to get past that objection, or get past that, because they're coming into that, and if it's an objection in a sales process, their mindset is, I'm not going to move forward to the next stage, right? And I want this person to hear me. If the person comes into you and you've done something wrong, or they're angry, or they're having a go, they want to be heard because they're trying to say something to you. So if somebody wants to be heard in those 2 situations, what's the best thing you can do?
Listen.
Yeah, you can listen, but how can you tell them that you're listening? That you've heard. Sorry?
I think Kim might have been hot micing.
Oh, okay. Acknowledge them. Just a simple acknowledgement. I hear you. I understand you. Okay? It's one word. You say that to somebody who's annoyed, I understand you. What do you think is going to happen to them? They calm right down, right? If somebody's giving you an objection and you acknowledge them and you say, I hear that objection. Thank you for sharing that with me. They're going to be completely thrown. They're not going to know what to think, because every other salesperson just goes into handling the objection, and you've just acknowledged them. And they're like, oh, this is a guy that I like. So you're building a relationship there subconsciously too. Right, so you've acknowledged them now. What's the next thing we do? They've given us bits and pieces of information. What do we want to try to do next? Esteemed, perfect. Piece the puzzle together. Qualify. We go back to that part, right? We can't solve a problem until we have all the facts. So now I understand you. Can you tell me why you feel like that? Why this might be an objection for you? Somebody comes in angry into a room. I hear you. Thanks for sharing that with me. Can you explain to me a little bit more in detail as to exactly what's gone wrong? Right. And we don't stop asking those questions until we've got everything. And then what do? So we've now acknowledged them. We've qualified them. Right. We've asked them loads of questions to understand the problem. What do we do next? That's what you've been doing through Savida. Just collect and collate all the info. Ella, bang on summary, but repeat back to them. So we acknowledge them, we qualify them, so we understand all of the problem. We're now going to repeat back to them because we want to get them from a negative state of mind to a state of mind where they're saying yes, right? So we're going to start repeating back to them. From the first part, this is what I understand what you said. Is that right? Yes. I also heard you say this, this, and this. This is why you're annoyed, or this is why you don't want to move forward. Is that right? Yes. So I'm going to get 2 or 3 yeses out of them just by repeating back to them. So one, I want to get yeses from them to change their mindset. 2, by repeating back to them, what am I showing them? Yeah, you're showing them that you understand them. You don't have to tell them now that I understand you, right? You don't have to make them say any words to make them feel like you understand them. You've just repeated it back to them. That shows what Riles just said, that you paid attention, that Joseph said you understand them, you're on the same page as them, and you've made them feel comfortable. So now we've done all of that, right? We've repeated it back to them. What's the next step? They've given us an objection. We've qualified it. We've repeated it back to them. We fully understand what it is. What do we do next? What was that? Sell. Close, sell. Another word for it. Vida, that's one step after this. We have an objection. What haven't we done yet? Pitch, yeah, pitch, but there's another word for it. Address the issue, provide the solution, overcome the objection. Right? So we acknowledge, we probe, we qualify, we repeat, and now we're overcoming the objection. We've understood the whole objection. Remember, we have to overcome it to move on to the next stage. Okay? A lot of sales training, nine out of 10 sales courses that you go to will finish there and say, great, you've overcome the objection. But if that's where you stop, this is what will happen in the sale, right? You will overcome the objection. You will say to them, okay, so this is how I will solve the problem that you've come up with. Does that solve it? Yes. And now you're both sitting in there twiddling your thumbs because you haven't done the next part, which Vida already mentioned. You've got to close them, right? So quite often, the last 2 are done in the same sentence, right? So again, I've already said the sentence to you guys. Now I've overcome his objection. I've now overcome the objection. And I'm going to now say to him, is there any, if it's a separate sentence, what other concerns do you have before I take you through to the next stage? Right? They have to give me an answer to that. And then I'm going to move on to the next stage. If I'm going to do it as a together between, with the overcome and close, I'm going to overcome the rejection and say, okay, so this is what you want to do. This is how we will solve that problem. This is how we will solve that problem. Okay. Now that we've gone over this, the next step, I'm not even going to ask them. I'm just going to say to them, this is the next step. The worst thing you can do with somebody is ask them, are you ready to move to the next step? Or anything like that, because it just it gives them an opportunity to leave the sale, right? It gives them an opportunity to come out of the sales process. Okay. So I've got them written out. So the 5 steps of objection handling: acknowledge, probe, repeat, overcome, and close. Okay. You can use this in sales. You can use this at home. You can use this anywhere. Okay. Really should work. And if there's anything you try it, it becomes a little bit difficult to try it. But again, the way to perfect these, the way to get them right, is to practice them, write them down, have them visible, and just really, don't be afraid of making a mistake. Okay. So last thing, right? You've now gone through the process. You're about to close the deal. You already know you qualified it. We're going to assume we've done a great job and we've qualified this. And the guy says that we've got a 100,000 budget to get this project done. And you come to the end of it, the process. You put your bid forward, and your bid. You look at it and you look at the bid, and your bid comes in at, let's say, 110,000. Right, so it's slightly over budget.
Sorry,
Um,
Alphageek. Just gonna make a quick not introduction. Sorry, interruption.
yeah,
Mando said he loves this, but he didn't understand the overcome part. Do you think we could go over that a little bit deeper?
yeah, absolutely. So overcoming the objection. Let's have what example can I give you? Okay, so I'm going to give you the overcoming the objection in a very, very different way scenario rather than sales, because the best way to do this is with live examples, right? So 2 weeks ago, my project manager is on holiday. We have our company's biggest project we've ever won. It's worth 110,000 euros a month to us over 12 months. So a big deal. It's the biggest deal we've ever done. We're 2 months into the project, and I get a call from my junior project manager on a Friday. He's in a panic. He's like, Paul, I need your help. Like, okay, what's wrong? Basically, we've just had a workshop with the client, and Devanjali, our young lady who's from India, was taking it, and he said, look, for me, Devanjali didn't do anything wrong, but the client reacted. We felt like they were trying to bully her, and in fact, at the end of the meeting, they've had a separate meeting with me, and the CFO of the company has said to me, explicitly, that you, Devanjali, can no longer work on the project, or they're happy to cancel the contract with us. Okay, that's a big fucking objection, right? That's an objection that we have to get over before we can get to the next stage. So I have to overcome that, right? So what were my steps? The first thing I did is, obviously, I did some research, and I got booked a meeting with the CFO. And the first thing I did was I acknowledged his problem, right? So I said to him, look, I've watched 10 hours worth of meeting, the meetings that you guys have had. I've looked at all the sessions held by every member of my team, including Devanjali's. So, I know exactly what's going on. And I would like to address in this meeting over the next half hour 2 things with you that really stood out to me. Number one was that I felt that from your side, you didn't have a full picture of what's going on. And number two, I'd like to address the problem that you obviously had with my colleague Devanjali. Right? Acknowledge them straight away. Next thing I went into was qualifying, right? So okay, look, can you, now that I've told you how I feel, can you give me a little bit of an understanding over the next 2-3 minutes of how you feel and from your point of view, right? And I qualified and qualified and qualified him. And by the time I finished qualifying him, I understood that actually he didn't have a problem with Devanjali. He had a problem with the overall project, right? Not from our side, but from their side, because there was bad communication, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so I got to that. Now I had to overcome it, right? So in overcoming it, I sat down and spoke to him and said, look, I understand that the issues that you're having is to do with communication. Now I can solve these problems for you, and because I think these shouldn't exist. And in fact, my job on the project is to do exactly that, because I have access to all your sponsors. I have access to everything we need. Okay. So now I'm going to overcome his objection, right, to Devanjali. Say, look, I understand that you were upset with my colleague Devanjali, but now that we've had a look at everything that you just said to me as to why you felt the way you did, do you feel like Devanjali did a bad job? Right? And he held his hands up and he's like, actually, no, she didn't do a bad job. She was actually doing a good job, but I think there was a lot of frustration. There was this, that, or the other, blah, blah, blah. And then I closed him. So, okay, do you have, what other concerns do you have with the project? Or are you happy with me getting involved and pushing this forward? And because I am not going to leave my colleague Devanjali in the background, she is going to work on our team. She's one of the best people we have. So are you now happy for me to move forward in that? And here I did ask him a yes, no question, because I wanted a yes, no answer from him. Okay, does that help, Mando?
Mando's had to jump, but I think he got the message before he left. So he's going to listen to the rest of this later as well. Oh, he's still here.
He got it. Yeah. Okay. Well, look, if there's anything else that pops up, I'm happy to give more examples. Just let me know, right? But yeah, anybody else want to ask anything on that? Okay. So price negotiation, right? You're at the end. You know that your price is there or thereabout within the budget, but you know every client they have. If they're a small business, they'll negotiate with you directly because they're tight for money. And if they're a global business, they have a procurement team there, especially to rip your butthole when it comes to negotiating price, right? So that's always going to happen, right? So the client says to you, "Look, love your service. I want the quality of your service, but we want it cheaper." Do you drop your price at the time, right? At one time, Core Team was a small business. Do you think I dropped my prices because somebody said they want it cheaper? There's a really, really simple technique that I use. Absolutely, baby cakes. I said to them, no, right? And how did I negotiate it with them? There are three things you can get in a project. A project, your service can be good, it can be fast, it can be cheap. The trick is, as a customer, you're only allowed to pick two of these. So pick them. If it's good and fast, it's not going to be cheap. If it's fast and cheap, it's not going to be good. If it's good and cheap, it's definitely not going to be fast. So if the client is under time pressure, um, and they want it good, cheap is just not an option. And if a client says to me, "Look, I just want it cheap and fast. I don't really care about whether it's good," my answer to them is usually, look, there are several competitors of us out there that you can work with that will do that for you, but that's not for us. Thank you very much. We don't deliver things that are just fast and cheap because our reputation's on the line. I'm happy for you to do it as fast and good, but fast and cheap is not for us. And that's a really important lesson in sales, right? You have to learn how to, people always say you've got to have leads and you've got to qualify them in, qualify them in. There is always such a thing as qualify them out, right? At the start, when you start your pipeline, you might only have 5 or 6 people in your pipeline. But if you do that hard work and graft every day, then within 3 months, you're going to have a pipeline with about 50, 60 companies in it, right? And then you're going to be struggling with time, pulling your hair out, saying, how do I manage these? Well, that's the time to start qualifying people out, right? And that's where we look at, is that person giving me enough information? Is the person who's buying from me responsive? Are they giving me time and meetings whenever they want? How many other companies am I competing with? Are those companies any good? You know, and you got to build yourself a reputation. Okay, and this doesn't happen quick, right? But you can do it from day one. From very day one, we've had Core Team. We've had the philosophy that we are not going to negotiate on price. We do negotiate, but we are not going to be cheap. We are by no means the cheapest company out there, even though we are the youngest company in our ecosystem. Okay. Any questions on this bit? Negotiating a price. It's nice and easy at the end, right? You've done the hard work. They already like you as a person. They know you can solve their problem. They're going to pay you for it. Don't worry.
Love that. One question I do have is, what if they, so at the end of that, you mentioned that if it's fast and cheap, they can go to their competitors. What if they say something along the lines of, the competitors have good and fast service, but it's cheaper than yours, or they start comparing in any way, shape, or form to the
I'd say
competitors?
to them, why the hell are you talking to me?
I love that. Love that.
You've spoken to 3 of my competitors. They're all fast and good like me, but they're cheaper than me. So why are you sitting in front of me trying to negotiate a price?
That's solid.
So Sawyer boy, you said, what about the friend card? If you wouldn't mind just explaining what you mean, but what about the friend card? This is business, like you're trying to close a deal. What about friends? Sometimes friends are the worst people to do business with because they're the only ones that want you to give it to them for free. And they will also be the most demanding. But when it comes down to business, try to draw a line. And my friends pay me. They might pay me a much lower fee, but they pay me. This is my day job. This is how I earn. This is how I pay my bills. Okay. Sometimes they pay me with an exchange of service, right? It's not always money. Like they might say, okay, look, I'll do some graphic design work for you, or I might do this for you, or I might do that for you. Great. Do I need any of the services they have? I might do, and at that point, I'll use them, and that's what I will exchange with them. Okay, guys, I've got like 5 minutes, so I'm just gonna go into the mindset quickly because it's really, really important about mindset, especially with small businesses when you're getting into sales for the first time, and especially when you are doing the hardest type of sales, which is become a hunter, right? And being a hunter is probably also financially the most rewarding job out of all of these. Okay, not cold calling part, but the senior sales part. Like, I've got sales guys in my team. Like my biggest earner right now, last year earned £350,000, and his basic salary is 50,000. Right, so hunters do make a huge amount of money, right? But so we spoke about a few. I don't have a graphic for this yet, but I will get prepared one with the team, and we'll share it with you guys later. But in terms of mindset, number one thing is that coming second is just not an option, right? If you're in a bid and you come second, you're first loser, right? You will lose bids, but you need to have this mentality, right? You need this mentality, and I have this because when I know I'm competing against two other competitors, I'm gonna wake up at 6 o'clock because I know those fuckers are waking up at 9. I'm gonna put in the extra 2 hours before them, and I'm gonna having meetings with the client at 8 o'clock in the morning because I know my competitor's getting into the office at 9, and then they might pick up the phone at 10. So by the time they come, I'm willing to outwork anybody out there because coming second is not an option. Okay. Number two, some people have all the will to win, but after about a year's worth of hard work, they're fucked. They're like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. It's too much hard work. Okay. Resilience, 10,000 hours, right? This isn't something that I've invented. It's used in sport, it's used in work, it's used by philosophers, right? To really become a specialist at any one particular skill set, you need to spend 10,000 hours doing that. Okay. And then you become a real specialist at that. Can you imagine if for the next 3-4 years, every single day, 8 hours a day, you practiced and honed in just one type of skill? Right? Resilience. Where else does resilience apply? Okay. I think Esting, you started off with this, right? What was your example again?
So for me, it was slightly different. It was setting up a business development team without knowing, all the fundamentals, not having a sales plan, not being able to coordinate the teams as effectively as I would like to, and then ending up, slimming down the team.
Okay, so that sort of stuff, I think that was one of them. There was another point that you brought up. So that was, that sales management is very different to doing the sales job itself, right? And there's a saying out there, the best salespeople very rarely make the best sales managers, right? Because those type of salespeople want to go out there and close deals for themselves. They want to go out there and do this. A sales manager has a gut instinct to help others. Okay, but so it's a completely different skill set. But in terms of managing the team, and I mean, we can do a one-on-one session if you want, and just go through how I did core team and set that team up and the different processes. But the first thing, if you haven't got a CRM, is get a CRM, because a CRM will have a lot of sales processes
100%.
already figured in it.
Yeah, we were actually going to just get one. I actually messaged Aki's this week so that we could figure out, setting up a CRM and whatnot, learning it, and then applying
Let's
it.
get a free version of HubSpot.
HubSpot. That's your recommendation.
I only recommend it because it's very, very good, and the basic version is free, and you can have as many
Beautiful. I
people in your
will have
sales
that
team
set
using
up
it.
by the
And,
end of the week.
and if you really then want to go into detail about forecast and stuff, they have a subscription version. But I
Mhm.
mean, we're a 10 million turnover business, and we haven't subscribed to it. We use the free version.
Beautiful. No, that's good to hear that. All right, I'll check it out for sure. It'll be one of my priorities. It was on my
Okay.
to-do list for this week.
Okay. Cool. Happy to again help with that to help you look at those. But in terms of mindset, resilience applies in a very, very different way as well, and strength of character is that if you're a new business person, it's quite often that you're going to get 90 to 95% of your initial calls and bits of contact are going to end with a no, right? And a hard no. And some people may just hang up the phone on you, right? Um, you might be able to deal with it in a day, right? But imagine that happens to you for a month, right? How do you get through that? Okay. You have to get used to saying no and just remember that a no is closer to a yes. Okay. So I know like the stats for my industry. So I've done research and I know that an average person in my industry, average new business person, they get about 55 no's before they get a yes. Right. I also know with my skill set that I get about 25 to 30 no's before I get a yes. Okay. So my mindset is that when you get to the end of the month and you start to think, oh, I keep getting no's, I keep getting no's, I actually have a little post-it note next to me, right? And every time I get a no, I tick it off because that's one closer to a yes.
Wow, that gave me goosebumps, man. I love that.
Okay, so you've got to spin your mindset. You have to look at, and for me, every conversation I get into, I always get something out of it, right? So even if I get no, so initially you got to train your mind that every no is one step closer to a yes. And then over time, what we've got to learn is how do we get something out of every single call, right? So the client says no, but I'm going to ask them a question. I'm going to say, look, at first I'm going to acknowledge them. Look, I understand you appreciate that. You're happy with your current supplier. Now I want to get something out of that call, right? And the very basic thing I can get out of every call is knowledge, basic information, right? Because you can continuously be learning. So I'm going to ask them, if I may just ask you, what is it about your current supplier that's making you so happy that you don't even want to consider moving? Right? I'm generating market information. And once I've got them in that positive frame of mind, I'm probably going to ask them for a lead, right? And say to them, is there any other companies you know that are going through similar issues or any other companies that you know that are deploy work there that we should be speaking to? Okay. That's called sales information. So every call, I get at least one bit of sales information so that every single call gives me something. And that just helps me at the end of the day mentally handle all the no's, right? Because I can see what I've produced. Okay. So the two most important things that we've got to gone through about a salesperson. Anybody want to go back, repeat that back to me?
I'd
So
say
number
the
one.
two things are. Oh, no, I'll let you go. I
No,
think
no,
you can
you.
explain it a lot better.
No. I'm just saying
So
number one. What is it?
number one, well, resilience. So putting in that 10,000 hours, becoming a specialist, working harder than the next person, making sure that you're getting in earlier, having these calls earlier. And then after that, not being scared of the no's because every single no is a close, or well, it gets you closer towards a yes. And especially looking at, the industry standards, you should frame your mind to not be scared of all of those no's. And then, sorry, this is three. I don't know if I've mixed, I've understood them as separate things. But the third one to me is getting information out of every single call so that you can, utilize some of this information to either improve your own systems and processes, get market information, or, put them into a positive frame of mind so you can then lead them on towards getting a referral.
All right, I learned something as well here. So we learned 3 or 4 different ways things here. So the other one was the will to win. So the 3 things that you just said, and also the will to win. Again, if you want to be a salesperson, you have to, like, this isn't a sport. Like, nowadays there's a culture where your parents take you and they say, "Oh, well done for taking part." This isn't a well done for taking part environment, right? You either win the deal or you lose it. Okay, so like that will to win. This isn't about taking part. This is about winning. If you're going to take part in this, you're taking part because you want to win. Okay, so build that into your character as quickly as possible, and your number one thing should be that, because if you have the will to win, you will invest in yourself to learn. You will listen to other people. You will get coaches. You will get mentors, and you will try everything. You will experiment. You will do what it takes to get from A to B and win. Right? Obviously, when I say do anything it takes, I'm not saying go out there and start taking shortcuts and scamming people. What you really need to do is just go out there and yeah, the best salespeople I know, that's the one key thing, is that they will wake up at the same time as me if needed. All right, the last thing I'm going to leave you guys with is, if you feel lazy and you're in a sales job, just remember that one of your competitors that's also pitching could be me.
I like it. I like it.
Okay, so at any point we could be coming up against each other on a sales pitch. So now that you know what I'm willing to do to go and win, are you willing to do more? Okay. Any questions on this?
Alphageek, man, honestly, this is probably the best sales session I've ever gotten to listen to. So I'm really looking forward to future lessons that you have. Even if you have anything on, sales management, or even some of the tools like CRMs that you use, I think all of those would be insanely appreciated. Like, just seeing how many people have been in this session consistently throughout the bloody bear market, and all of the comments in the events chat as well. Pretty unreal. Pretty unreal.
For sales management, just a recommendation. There's an audio book called Gung Ho. So
Gung Ho.
GUNG and then Ho. I've just put it in the text. It's only a 90-minute book. It's available on Amazon. It's an audio book. When I set up Core Team again, I go back to that, where we had COVID at April 2020, 6 months after we started, and for the next 3 months we did 0 sales, right? And I had to learn fast how to become an inspirational leader. And this book changed me completely in the way I work as a leader and who I am as a leader. It helped me understand my role as a CEO.
I love that. I love that. I'll check it out, man. Appreciate it. So, yeah, thank you so much. And thank you to the audience as well for sticking around for the entire session. And I hope everyone got as much value out of it as I did.
Guys, thank you again so much for listening. I really loved how many of you played part. As a person who's training, coaching, when so many people take part, it really is pleasing, and it makes it worthwhile. So I appreciate everything from all of you guys that took part. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thanks, guys. Catch you guys later.
Catch you later. Bye.